candidate for governor, and then the winner, Leroy Collins, clearly stated his support for segregation, framing the civil rights as government overreach, as federal overreach, right? Uh, and on the day of the second Brown decision, which allowed districts to move with all deliberate speed to end segregation, the Florida legislature passed a bill to add a constitutional amendment adding school districts to run their districts as they see fit. In 1956, the government signed other laws impacting the rights of Black parents to get children assigned to white schools. All of this was in the context of the growing power of the reactionary pork chop gang based in rural Florida with an outsized voting bloc because of the lack of redistricting. Eventually, the dynamics of teachers' unions supporting integration and the larger districts demanding equal funding broke through this, helped immensely by the 1968 statewide teachers' strike, which helped to create and cement new federal rights. Trump has a vision of taking us back to a period before these rights and harkening back to those early days. They may not have figured out all the details, but that's their road, right? When you see how they're focusing on DEI, don't you hear those sort of echoes of the mid 20th century talking points? Throughout his campaign, Trump mentioned those three letters constantly. The term was always said in a slow and derogatory way, DEI. Those three letters came to mean nothing, but also everything for the far right. They're said with such vitriol uh, that you could tell in some cases those three letters were substitutes for slurs some of these people wish they were saying to us, right? Um, on January 21st, he issued an executive order rescinding the 1965 Equal Employment Rule, which explains almost everything about the content, goals, and objectives of his DEI campaign, especially when combined with the executive order on DEI that came before. Why would he reach back to 1965 and rescind this rule, known as Executive Order 11246, issued by Lyndon B. Johnson? What moved LBJ to even issue this executive order? Uh, well, it was the struggle for civil rights. The Black freedom struggle from 1955 to 1965 and beyond was a movement that was not going to be denied. It was it was fighting the worst excesses of racism and inequality, people with merit who had no opportunity. From the 1955 Montgomery bus boycott, which were year-long defiance of the white power structure, to the other struggles within the same years. All of this, of course, culminating in the famous Civil Rights Act. But before then, a lot of bloodshed, right? As churches were becoming the centers of organizing for Black freedom struggle in that period, many of those churches were bombed. The most famous being in 1963 in Birmingham, where 4 girls were killed in such bombings. In 1959, integration of the Little Rock High School into the sit-ins of the February 1960 in Greensboro, people risked their lives and built a movement. That's not even to mention the Freedom Riders of 1961 and so on. Why do I mention all these struggles? I mention all these struggles to say that these executive orders were signed in blood, blood of Americans who fought for a better future. And that can't be forgotten. Trump is threatening the progress that all those Americans put their lives on the line for. And we need to recognize that. We need to recognize those that came before us, bled for us, and sacrificed so much for us. So that is the only reason why LBJ finally came to the table in 1964 and signed a bill that gave African Americans the Voting Rights Act and the Equal Employment Office, EEOC. And the drive for civil rights didn't stop there. In 1965, there was a series of marches in Selma for voting rights, which faced brutal repression. And we all know how that kept fighting. But that continuing pressure on LBJ led him to sign stronger and stronger protections for workers and signing Medicare into law, of course. There were other signs of employer resistance the more that minimum wage was talked about or workers' protections were talked about. And there were signs of employers' resistance to the EEOC, the agency that was founded to investigate racism in employment, and signs that this was not going to be something the nation took lightly. It was something that had to be pushed for and strived for consistently. So we finally got there in September 24th, 1965, when LBJ finally signed the executive order mentioned at the top, 1124-6. It applied to all federal contractors and subcontractors in federally assisted projects. Like the EEOC, it required non-discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. But unlike the EEOC, it went a step further. It required employers to take affirmative action to ensure that applicants are employed and that the employees are treated during the employment without regards to their race, creed, color, or national origin. Did that mean ignoring merit? No, of course not, which is one of those nasty smears you hear about DEI. It meant assuring that they made an effort to look for qualified candidates when they might not have otherwise. It also gave union representatives and others, the employee, to get information to challenge decisions made by management or to expose the demographic inequalities of the employer. By rescinding this executive order and mandating that all future contracts, don't have to listen to this executive order, Trump is purging what civil rights struggles have won. The Office of Contract Compliance is now projected to reduce its staff by 90% because there's nothing to enforce except for a smaller veteran rights law. Just to put this into perspective, last year, just in Florida, the Office of Federal Contract Compliance recovered $8.9 million due to racial and gender discrimination in employment. And now all that's gone, all that's in jeopardy. So it's not a stretch to say what Trump has done in 2 months turned the clock back 60 years. I mean, that is something to think about. That is where we are before LBJ signed these laws into place in 1965. And he wants to return to that era. And the Trump administration wants to smash state protections and smash what's left of what we have to defend workers, federal and private sector workers. And on that cheery note, that's how we're going to start the event off. And I'm going to sort of now let our next speaker talk. That will be Linda Joseph, the Political Director and Community Outreach Director for SEIU, talking about the importance of civil rights, the civil rights movement for labor. Linda, are you in a place to do that?
I can, but it's going to be sparse, so I apologize if you don't hear me. I am with SEIU. I don't when the famous "I Am a Man" campaign where we had in Tennessee, where Dr. King was assassinated. That exists in the state of Florida. And so let me tell you what's going on in the state of Florida when it comes to civil rights in this community. That same union that in 1968, Dr. King went down and speak on their behalf is the same union that exists today. It's called FPSU in Florida. One of the things that DeSantis is doing is that he removed payroll deduction. We understand how payroll deduction is mandatory for our members. And then another thing he did, when he did it for all public sector, we thought he was going to just do.
I think we lost. Did we lose Linda?
Yeah. Well, there she is.
There she is.
Oh, there she go.
Linda, you're back.
Linda.
Uh-oh.
Maybe she's
Did
flying
you hear
away.
me? I'm so sorry.
No,
So
No,
yeah,
I'm here. I'm still at the airport. I'm still at the airport. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I
Yes,
can
we
hear
can
you.
hear you.
Okay, I'll wrap it really. one of the things where with Florida is done is that they remove payroll deduction for public sector workers. So there is that the members that we're looking at is our cafeteria workers, bus drivers, our janitors. These are the people that we support. These are the lifeblood for the school system. Without these people, the school system cannot run. They are the support staff. Those are our members. And so one of the things is that he removing payroll deduction. And another thing that he's been doing is that if you do not get the 60% of the unit, we have to have election. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to tell you we've been crushing our elections, winning overwhelming numbers. Florida will teach the world how to deal with these bullies. Florida, the people of Florida, our members, will teach how we will move forward. Because we no longer have payroll deduction, we're dealing directly with our members. They thought this was going to be the death throes. This was going to be the one that kills the union in the state of Florida. But anything, if done the opposite, we've energized, we've been educating, and we're motivated. It gives us an opportunity to get back in front of our members. One of the things that members are resilient. One of the things you cannot take something away from the members. So another thing we were able to do, all the payroll deduction, we're able to put them on our portal. So that tells us we have almost 5,000 members. We do not have to do payroll deduction. They're directly paying us. That tells you that's how important this union is. That tells you how much they need and wants the union. We just had two in-person election and we killed it. We won by 99% of the vote. So I'm here to tell you, as labor member, we are still here. We're not going nowhere. If anything, we're getting stronger by the day. Every time he challenges us and we have to do an election, we have to go in front of our members. It's given us opportunity to really rally the troops. And our members can see that we're here fighting with them. We're not fighting behind them. We're fighting right next to him. So they appreciate that. So I'm here to tell you, Florida, believe it or not, everybody, Florida will show the world how we move in this new anti-union world. And we're still winning as of today. Yesterday, we had an election. It was in the great city of Delray, and they won by 99% of the vote. You should have seen it. They look exactly like the same men in 1968. And Dr. King, I Am a Man, young, black, and smart, and they all voted yes. I'm so sorry I couldn't give you my whole speech because I'm at the airport, but thank you. The fight continues, and Florida, believe it or not, going to show the world this is how you live in an anti-union world. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thanks for doing that from the Philly airport. Lorenzo, who's next?
Who is next?
Who's next?
I believe let's maybe if Ruth is ready.
Okay.
Ruth
Ruth, do
Beltran,
you want to speak?
and
Yes,
then
yes.
Cynthia, and then Carolina.
Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Ruth Beltran. I am a former and retired investigator with the Wage and Hour Division of the U.S. Department of Labor, and I am also a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation in Tampa Bay. I want to start by adding to the discussion that Wesley and Linda put together in saying how the civil rights movement really helped transform the women's movement. In the beginning, these groups that they mainly focus on raising the conscious. However, later on, it led to contributing to many other struggles. For example, a measure of where things were in the legal field in 1965 said that married women could finally have the right to contraception. But as the decade went on, the civil rights movement went to Black liberation, and then women's liberation came into its own with many members that came from the civil rights movement. So by 1973, even the Supreme Court had moved from contraception to the right to abortion. Bans against intermarriage, for example, were finally declared unconstitutional. The gay movement advanced from the tentative movement, for liberation based on from a tentative movement to liberation into a real movement for Black liberation. So this is why Trump, when Trump wants to do away with DEI through his executive order, he's essentially saying and wants to undermine the foundation of everything that we stand on. And he does this by trivializing all of the history that these three letters DEI mean and applying them to examples that don't really reflect the history behind them. But I want to speak a little bit about the Federal Department of Labor and how vital it is right here in the state of Florida in particular. The Department of Labor was created back in 1913 under the pressure from the labor movement. Labor demanded the Bureau of Statistics in the 1800s and then more to have a way to enforce labor laws, right? And this is how it came into existence. Right here in Florida, workers are especially at a very high, very vulnerable, in very high rates of wage theft is what we call when an employer basically finds a way to steal your wages, whether that is by not paying you overtime, by shaving hours, cutting half hour here and half hour there that will put you below, or if they are straight up stealing tips from workers, etc. Unlike other states, Florida does not have a state agency to help workers recover these unpaid wages. And we have seen that some cities and counties have taken it up have taken up and created agencies, but this is very, very minimal work in the state of Florida. So I only know of 6 counties out of 67 counties that even have a wage theft division to help workers. So because there is no state function that does this, the Federal Department of Labor is the one that enforces wage theft, minimum wage, overtime, family and medical leave laws, also child labor. I think we call them youth employment at this point, but child labor provisions and so on. And the Economic Policy Institute estimates that out of the 10 most famous states, which includes Florida, 2.4 million workers lose $8 billion annually. Listen to this, in minimum wage violations alone. This does not include overtime violations. They also estimate that 25% of workers in Florida are low wage workers and experience minimum wage violations. And this constitutes a $1.1 billion each year that is taken away from workers, basically stolen. And as you know, in Florida, if you steal $5, $10 from your employer has the ability to call the police and get you arrested, right? However, when an employer steals your wages, whether that is your entire paycheck or not paying you overtime for the last 3-4 years, you cannot call the police on them, because if you do, they are going to tell you to go to the Department of Labor, or they are going to tell you to go to a small claims court. During my time with the Department of Labor, I worked for 5 years in New York State, in Syracuse, New York, which is the countryside of New York, for those of you that don't know. And I had a strong Department of Labor. So when someone called and said, hey, my employer took my last paycheck and is refusing to give it to me, I could assess whether my agency could help them or if the State Department of Labor can help them even more. However, later on, I transferred to Florida, and this is where I was for the remainder of my time with the Department of Labor. And the story is very different for Florida workers here. They do not have a State Department of Labor. And just imagine someone calling us, right, and telling us that the employer stole $400 from them, right? And many times the answer, if it wasn't for the Department of Labor, the answer will be to go file in small claims court. Small claims court takes over $300 to file. So we could be telling someone that is looking for the $400 that was stolen from them to go invest another $300 into hopefully getting their paycheck or being able to claim their wages that were stolen from them. And this is why the Federal Department of Labor is just so vital, and we must keep the Federal Department of Labor. I can give you endless number of examples, but the Department of Labor, just for example, last July of 2024 recovered $288,000 in back wages and damages from someone who was just shaving hours from time cards. We saw $97,000 that were recovered for 26 workers in Miami Beach. And this was just a deli. And it's not like the problem of wage theft is not unique to any particular industry. We see it all across. And like, this picture says right behind me, in Florida, wage theft is rampant in the most important industries, right, which are tourism, hospitality, and construction. So it's just of the essence that we maintain our Department of Labor, that we stand up against our government when they try to destroy something so vital, such as the Department of Labor. We have to protect our workers and not just corporations, which is something that we see, very, very often. In addition to that, I want to highlight that the problem of wage theft, it's also an issue of gender and racial justice, because women, people of color, and immigrants are more likely to experience wage theft. And this is why, we are seeing the great attacks that we are seeing against immigrants right now. It's an effort to send them into the closet so that when they are abused, when when their hourly wage is stolen from them, they are less likely to go and report this because they are so vulnerable. And this is across every industry: food service, drink service, retail, agriculture, fishing. Among any industry, this is exactly the case. So we need to see, instead of a cutting down that we have already seen at the Department of Labor, on a national scale, including right here in Florida, we actually need to see the expansion of that. And a great example of, great work that has been done is the Miami-Dade County, when they established their wage theft division back in 2010, and just the amount of money that they have been able to recover. And this is just like one county agency. And I say that just to give you an idea of the amount of money, the millions of dollars that is actually stolen from workers on a daily basis. In addition to that, we also have, the agency that I worked for was the Wage and Hour Division, where we enforced minimum wage, overtime, child labor laws, Family and Medical Leave Act, agricultural laws regarding agricultural workers, whether they were here on a visa or just regular workers. But we also have OSHA, right, which is the Health and Safety Administration. We know that thousands of workers die at work every year on a regular basis, and that is with oversight. So you can just imagine the damage that can be created if we do not have a strong Department of Labor, particularly for people in Florida, where we lack a state Department of Labor. So just wanted to highlight those things and reinstate how important it is that we maintain that federal Department of Labor. Otherwise, workers in Florida will be, the wage theft and the stealing of their wages will continue. And something else that I want to point out is that a lot of people think of wages in terms of like right now, but think of it in terms of, if you are not paid overtime long term, right? Because you are put on a salary, for example, and told that you are not entitled to overtime, which is a very normal myth that people believe, that if I'm paid on a salary, then I'm not entitled to overtime. But this also has a lifelong impact, because if the worker becomes disabled or ever retires, those are wages that were also not contributed into their Social Security wages, right? So they will be receiving a much lower rate if they retire or become disabled than they would if they have been paid correctly. So this has like lifelong consequences when it comes to the stealing of their wages. It follows people all the way through. They retire after they are 65, 67 for some of the young people, unfortunately. But even all the way until the time they die, they may be making a much, much lower wage because the employer ended up pocketing those wages. And the problem is very rampant. Just want to like bring that to your attention. It is not just a random business here and there that's stealing wages and shaving hours. It is everyone, including like the good people, right? The people that consider themselves good employers. in my experience, in investigating these businesses, they have second set of books. They hide the hours. Now with technology, they have gotten just really good at making things so confusing that even though the worker knows that their wages are being stolen, it's hard for them to put it in math because they may not have access to their time card, or they may not, they just play with the record keeping system. So just want to leave you with that, and amplify the need for the Federal Department of Labor to continue to protect workers here in Florida and nationwide. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Thank you for that, and that's a good insight to like how this is working and how, federal defunding is going to further hurt our workers. I mean, that's a lot of money that's going to be stolen. Stolen, right? All right. Well, up next we have Cynthia Boston Thomas, president of AFGE 507 in Palm Beach, but I'll let her introduce herself as well. Cynthia, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cynthia Boston Thompson. I am the local president of AFGE Local 507 in West Palm Beach at the VA. I'm also the Florida State AFG Florida State Council president. And with us tonight, I want to recognize my national vice president, Tatishka Thomas, as well as someone else who will be speaking on the Social Security side. She's also the president, but she's also my first vice president for the Florida State Council. And then I also have others from my council. Thank you for inviting us tonight. So I just want to talk about, we need to make no mistake. 2017, Trump made a point that he was going to clean the swamp. He referred the swamp. Those were federal employees. He upset some things, but we bounced back. However, he came back in 2024 and vowed to finish what he started, Project 2025. So what we now see is the war on federal employees. It's a threat to everyone. It's a threat to our veterans, our workers, and even our community.
Protection for future execution for any and all crimes.
Someone has a hot mic on.
Yeah, please mute.
Terry, mute everybody except the speaker.
Okay. So there are thousands of federal employees working across various agencies and installations. These dedicated professionals play a very critical role in providing essential services, from veterans health care to Social Security to even keeping our skies safe, TSA. One of the largest federal institutions in Palm Beach County is the Department of Veteran Affairs. We manage over 540,000 outpatient visits a year and 9,200 inpatient stays annually. Yet, despite the increasing demand for services, the number of federal employees has not kept pace with the population growth. The shrinking workforce, paired with others, it's basically forcing everyone out. It's forcing experienced employees, and it presents a staggering threat, not just to workers, federal employees, but to veterans, families, and our entire community. We must fight to protect these jobs. We must sustain the essential services and defend the well-being of all federal employees. So when we look at this from the standpoint of VA, the reality of staffing shortages in the VA is tremendous. Despite the need for care, VA facilities across the country, they continue to turn a deafening ear and turn a silent. There is tremendous understaffing due to factors such as slow hiring processes, bureaucratic inefficiencies, and my facility. So as a federal employee, you cannot be the pay leader there has to be other facilities to actually be that pay leader as a federal employee. West Palm Beach does not even come close. We have hardworking employees who have dedicated their lives to veterans all across this nation. Yet the wage, a fair wage, an increase, even compatible to our community, they still do not provide that to our workers. So in the things that they're doing currently, we now, for our veterans, there will be longer wait times. There's even employee burnout. So, and the quality of care concerns. So when we're farming out our veterans to, when we're farming them out to the, when we're farming them out to the community, a lot of these community providers do not know how to treat PTSD or MST. And those are very critical because what it does is it has our veterans go out in the community and they have to retell their horror, their story of the PTSD or the MST. So it's time for us, it's been time for us to stand up and fight. There's no more blaming, no more finger pointing. We have to get together for everyone's sake. TSA just the other day had all of their rights taken, everything. They just completed a 6-year contract and it was taken away from them. Their civil liberties were stolen. And we can't have that because if they start with one, they're going to start with all. So we have to be first and forefront and stand up. And we know a lot of times people are afraid, but this is our job. I am a person on a mission. My mission is to help restore the civil liberties for federal employees. I will hand this off to my Social Security sister, Shanelia Ferguson.
Thank you, Cynthia. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting us, and thank you for all the speakers before for standing up in what you believe in. I believe as unionists that we have the voice to fight for those who cannot speak for themselves. We're here for a reason, and as a proud federal employee, this is my 18th year in federal service. I've been with Department of Defense. I was with the Bureau of Prisons, and now I'm at SSA. I can vouch for the men and women I work with. A lot of them, like myself, are veterans. They're the most hardworking group of people I know. When you ask many of them, why do you do this job? I can tell you it's not for the money, it's not for the pay, but it's for the fact that they love to serve, and they love to serve the American public because they have a passion for doing the job. Now, with the recent onslaught that's been issued out by the Trump administration, before in 2020, it was bad, but this time it's 2.0. It's worse, and it's to the point where mental health for all federal employees it's at a capacity where you're worried about what they will do next, because many employees are coming forward and they're telling you what they're going through, that they want to quit, and we can only tell them, hold the line, hold the line, hold the line. Do not quit. Do not let anyone force you out. In fact, you take a buyout or whatever it is, how are you going to get paid? President Musk and President Trump, they don't like to pay anybody. They don't pay. So there's nothing. Yes, the House passed the measure today to take it to the Senate to stop the shutdown, but we don't know what's going to happen after. This onslaught is just to get rid of us, to get rid of whatever regulations that are in place to protect you, the American public. So I'm grateful tonight for the opportunity that you actually invited us to share our side of the story with you. And as an SSA employee, I want to bring to light the fact that SSA is the agency that touches you from the day you're born till the day you die. It's hard work. It takes at least 3 years fully at the teleservice center to know your job. And I would say it takes longer in the field office as a claims representative to know what you're doing to serve the American public. We're at a 50-year all-time low in staffing. And to make matters worse, when you call the 1-800 number due to the staffing issues, yes, you might wait an hour or 2 or 3 hours, but please do not believe the narrative out there that we're lazy, that we're not working, or if we're at home teleworking, that we're, taking bubble baths and sipping wine. No, we're not. We are tracked every single time, every single duration of that day. You get up and you're gone. You might get a little message saying, do you need help or something? You are tracked, you're recorded, or calls are monitored. We are not wasting your money. We are here ardently working, but we need support. We need funding. We need funding back to the 2018 level so we can process your claims more. The hearing offices can hire the people they need to expedite these claims. The Social Security offices need funding that they can hire employees. The 1-800 number, we need more individuals. We need more employees to come in to take these phone calls. We're not the swamp. I'm telling you, we're not. Some of us are GS5s, we're GS8s. We don't make a lot of money. A lot of federal employees, they have 2 or 3 other jobs just to survive. And we see how hard it is in Florida. So tonight, we just want to implore with you to join us, whether it's the TSA, whether it's the Department of Defense, whether it's with the EEOC, whether it's with the VA or Social Security. We desperately need your help at this time to help us get through this, because we are the front line for America. We are America's workforce. And if they take us down, then they're coming for everyone else next. So please, I don't want to take much of your time because I know you have a lot of other speakers, but we sincerely appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. And please, whatever you can do to support federal employees, we greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
And just to let you know before we go, we actually have a something that's coming up in April 12th for Families for Feds Unite and Fight. And this is everyone. One of the presidents, he's going to put it in the chat box. And we would love to see you all out there and even have you tell your stories. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. That was amazing. And I got to get your contact, Cynthia. We got to figure out how we fight back in the VA system. Something I believe you mentioned it, but just for the audience, last week there was a memo that Trump wants to cut 80,000 jobs in the VA. 80,000 is unsustainable. I mean, that is not a job cut. That is death to the VA. That is death. And they're doing that so they can privatize us. They can cut up our bargaining units, sell it off for parts. We all know that as unionists. We all know that's their goal. But please, when we talk about these dangers and these cuts and like our speakers before us said, draining the swamp, it's happening right now. It's happening right now. That's going to be 80,000 families put out of work, right? And we don't even mention the fact that relating this all back to civil rights and all of this, federal jobs is what built the Black middle class. It absolutely is. Letter carriers and federal jobs like this with strong pensions, strong insurance. This is what built the Black middle class. And like I said, Trump wants to take us to before 1964. Really right before 1964. Anyways, closing us out, I believe our last speaker is Carolina. Carolina, you want to take it from there?
Thank you. So today I'm filling the shoes for Jeff Bigelow. And so I was informed yesterday that he was in the hospital. So I want to first apologize because this one is going to be brief and I put it together really quickly, but I hope that you enjoy this presentation. It's the assault on labor rights. We're going to go from Wisconsin's Act 10 to Florida's SB 256. So, brothers and sisters, today we confront a grave injustice orchestrated a decades-long attack on workers' rights. This didn't start yesterday. It didn't happen overnight. It's been happening for over a decade, piece by piece, state by state, law by law. It began in Wisconsin in 2011 with Act 10, where public sector unions were gutted. It escalated to Florida in 2023, as we all know, with SB 256, a law designed to kill unions outright. And now it's gone federal with Project 2025, a blueprint to purge federal workforce, eliminate the entire agencies, and replace career workers with political loyalists. This is not just about Wisconsin. It's not just about Florida. This is about the future of the American labor movement. The goal is simple: to weaken unions, to silence workers, and to consolidate power. That power and put it in the hands of the wealthy and the politically connected. Wisconsin's Act 10 was the first attack. It started in 2011 with Governor Scott Walker. He dropped a bombshell to public sector unions. Act 10 did three things. One was that it stripped collective bargaining rights from most of the state workers. Number two was that it forced unions to certify every single year. And number three, it banned automatic dues deductions, which is something that we know over here, that it's making harder for workers to fund their own unions. This law was never about balancing the budget. It was never about anything good. It was about breaking power of organized labor. And the impact was devastating. The union membership plummeted, the wages stagnate, and public sector working conditions deteriorated. So they saw this as a win, and obviously they didn't stop there. Come to Florida 256, a new phase of the attack. Fast forward to 2023, Governor Ron DeSantis took a page of the Scott Walker's playbook and goes farther. 256 was designed to destroy public sector unions. Here's how. Bans automatic paycheck deductions, imposes a 60% membership threshold for all union recertifications, and excludes police and firefighters in a deliberate attack to conquer and divide. This law isn't just bad because it's a law that attacked unions, but it actually attacked democracy itself. Because when unions are weakened, workers lose their voices. Teachers lose the ability to negotiate better pages and smaller class sizes, which is directly related to classroom education, and it's directly related to the quality of education that children get. Healthcare workers lose the protections that keep hospitals safe, making it harder to practice in Florida, making it more dangerous. You are more likely to lose your license because something may go wrong. Public employees lose the power to fight for better working conditions. And once again, Florida was not the end game. It was a test run. Project 2025, the federal level assault, is now in effect, and it's about the entire federal workforce. What is it? The Heritage Foundation joined a bunch of other extremists, and they want to reshape the US government by slashing jobs, eliminating worker protections, and expanding the executive power. This is a blueprint for firing thousands of federal workers and replace them with political loyalists. We are seeing that right now. a strategy to eliminate key agencies that protect workers' rights, environmental standards, and social services that we all need or will need at some point. Sounds familiar? It's the same playbook, but it's the same at a national scale. They didn't stop where we are right now. They took it farther. The billionaire playbook of divide and conquer. Who benefits if unions are destroyed? Who wins when federal workforce is gutted? Billionaires, corporate CEOs, the power hungry, and the politicians. This is the class warfare. This is them against us. They push anti-union laws state by state. They use divide and conquer tactics, pitting union workers against each other. We're seeing that right now. Whether you responded to the famous email, if you reported what you were doing last week, if you didn't, then that's your problem. I don't want to get with you. That's a way of dividing us. They use billionaires like Elon Musk to make case for efficiency while chainsaws are symbolizing layoffs. They say that they are cutting waste, but the only thing that they are cutting is workers. Let's be clear. If we let them go away with this, no worker is safe. When you weaken the public sector unions, the private sector workers will follow. When they fire career federal employees, the entire country suffers because they provide the services that we need. If they succeed, they will come for every union, public and private. The path forward is resistance and solidarity. But here's what they don't understand. We've been here before, and we fought back before. In Wisconsin, workers never stopped fighting, and now the courts are beginning to overturn Act 10. In Florida, unions are challenging SB 256 in court and proving that it goes against our constitutional rights. Nationwide, the labor movement is growing. Workers at Starbucks, at Amazon, the auto industry are winning contracts that once were unwinnable, or so we thought. Because when we fight, we win. So what do we need to do? Stand up and fight back. So brothers and sisters, we are at a crossroads. We do not stand by and watch. We need to do something. As billionaires and politicians erase our hard-earned labor rights, do we tell them that they can take it away, that they can just move the clock back decades of progress? Or do we organize and strike back? Do we fight like hell for what do we deserve? I think the answer is clear, and history is on our side. Every right we have was won because of struggle. And now it's our time to fight. We are not powerless. We are the workers who built this country. We are not alone. We are millions strong. We are at the highest point of public support to unions. The future of the labor movement and the future of the country is on our side. We must stand up, we must fight back, and we must win. Solidarity forever.
Thank you so much, Carolina. Solidarity, everyone. And to that point about fighting back, Carolina, that was amazing. to the point of fighting back. I think we have a few faces in here that maybe we don't know each other. Please get acquainted with each other. This is the labor movement, and a labor movement only works when we're all familiar with each other. We're all in South Florida. We might as well get to know each other. Most of us are in South Florida, not all. And there were also a lot of organizations that were named. I'm a member of Democratic Socialists of America. Ruth mentioned PSL. Lorenzo, of course, Labor Community Alliance. There are organizations out there and people out there who are putting the fight and taking the fight to the streets, taking the fight to the employer, taking the fight wherever it can go. Frizzo, how could I forget Frizzo, Carolina? Thank you. So please, if you're not involved and you don't know some of the people that are in this call right now, make yourself familiar. Make yourself familiar with these organizations and our people. I just want to make sure people walk away with that. Lorenzo, go ahead. I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, let me also add to what Wesley is saying, piggyback from what he's saying, that every one of us here needs to be organized in order to be able to fight in a credible manner. I mean, let's take a hand. When you put your hand together, there is the punch is felt. But when you have your fingers all spread out, your punch doesn't mean a thing. It's when you come together when your punch means something. We need to come together. But the first is for all of us to be organized. All, like it was said here before, there is a lot of people here that are from different organizations, and that's fine. Because basically another thing that we are working towards is uniting all these different organizations in a working group. Not necessarily we're going to lose our identity. What we're going to do is be able to work together and get some of the impetus of being able to be a force of major proportions. Just think of terms of a demonstration. A demonstration of 50 people is very different to a demonstration of 500 people. And that is exactly the kind of mentality that we need to create. Again, people are not going to be forced to work on, should not be forced to work on anything that they don't feel like working on. But we have so much agreement among ourselves that all the things that we are in agreement, when we work on that, let's work together and maximize the power that we have. We are already working on it. Some people here tonight. What is Steve showing? He left.
No, I'm here.
Okay. Some people like him. I see. I know that Wesley, like DSA, is part of that. Socialist alternative, and we are working. Hopefully, we're going to be working very closely with the labor unions in order to be able to fight this fight. Remember what we said at the beginning. Labor issues are community issues, and community issues are labor issues. We are all part of this people on the same boat. And if we think along those lines, and let's not allow them to divide us for whatever reason they feel like dividing us about, we will win. We will win. And I said there, we will win, and that's no jive.
Thank you, Lorenzo. And Carolina, please close us out so we can get from there.
Thank you so much. So thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you to all the workers who have shared their stories, the labor leaders who continue to fight, to each and every one of you who showed up, and to not just listen, but thank you, because I know that all of you are taking action. What we are witnessing is not just an attack on federal workers. This is an attack on the very foundation of our democracy, our communities. and the services that millions rely on every single day. When Trump and his corporate allies wage a war on the federal workforce, they are waging a war on all of us, on our seniors waiting for Social Security, on veterans needing care, on working people demanding safe workplaces, clean air, fair wages, and anything else in between. Make no mistake, this is not about efficiency, it's about control. This is about dismantling the rights of workers, silencing dissent, and guarding public services while the ultra-rich hoard wealth. This is about taking power away from the people and handing it over to corporate interests. This is where we don't stand. When they come after one of us, they come after all. And we are not backing down. History has shown that when working people stand together, we win. We've beaten corporate greed before. We fought for union busting, against union busting, racist policies, and attacks on our rights. And we will do it again, but only if we act. And we know that we will win. Thank you all.
Solidarity, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night. Love you all.
Good night.
Good night.
See you in the
Hey, guys.
streets.
Thank
Be
you.
on the streets, yes.
In the streets. Yes.
See, that's the spirit.
Yes.
Did somebody copy the chat?